Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Patriot Underground here. Now, before we get started with the show tonight, I just want to say a couple of words on behalf of my partners over at patriotundergroundsilver.com. Now, everybody knows that the BRICS alliance is spearheading the de dollarization agenda that is increasing with every passing day. We've got an unsustainable debt. We've got really a hyperinflationary scenario that we're entering into with astronomical interest rates, treasury bond crisis. The big banks are all warning that a major calamity is right around the corner. So if you have your hard-earned retirement savings tied up in the stock market, now is the time to get out of the rigged system. Just like Trump told us, the entire system is rigged. And we are definitely headed toward a gold and silver constitutionally backed currency scenario here in America and all around the world. You can read the tea leaves for yourself and you can see very clearly where this is headed. Now, I partnered with the best company in the business to assist you with your 401k and your IRA rollovers. Over a year has gone by since our partnership began, and I've yet to have a single complaint. As a matter of fact, I've only had positive reviews. This company is incredible. Their prices are amazing. Their customer service is top notch. Check them out today, folks. Click the link in the description once again for patriotundergroundsilver.com. And by the way, they are offering up to $10,000 in free silver for qualified accounts for a limited time. So now is the time to make this move. The window of opportunity is shrinking with every passing day. I promise you, folks, I wouldn't steer you wrong. Go ahead and click that link and get this process started today. All right, folks. Hope you enjoy the show. God bless and Godspeed. Patriot out.
I'm very pleased to welcome a man who has been an incredible champion for so many of these values that we all share, and we've shared them for a long time. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Whoa. And he deserves it. He deserves it. For the past 16 months, Bobby has run an extraordinary campaign for President of the United States. His candidacy has inspired millions and millions of Americans, raised critical issues that have been too long ignored in this country, and brought together people from across the political spectrum in a positive campaign grounded in the American values of his father, Robert Kennedy, a great man, and his uncle, President John F. Kennedy.
He invited me to come see him the next day, and I went to Minneapolis and saw him. We met again a couple of weeks later in Florida, and we talked not about the things that separate us, because we don't agree on everything, but on the values and the issues that bind us together. And one of the issues that he talked about was having safe food and ending the chronic disease epidemic. Our children are now the unhealthiest, sickest children in the world. Don't you want healthy children? And don't you want the chemicals out of our food? And don't you want the regulatory agencies to be free from corporate corruption? The best way to build a safe America is to rebuild our industrial base and rebuild the middle class in this country. And don't you want a president who's going to get us out of the wars and who's going to rebuild the middle class in this country? Don't you want a safe environment for your children? Don't you want to know that the food that you're feeding them is not filled with chemicals that are going to give them cancer and chronic disease? And don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again? Thank you all very, very much, and God bless you, and God bless America.
Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk, I'm a woman's man, no time to talk. Music loud, women walk, being kicked around since I was born. Never tolerate, I don't hate, and you may look the other way, but we can try to understand, and do your time, but make no man. Whether you're further away, or nothing, staying alive, staying alive. Feel the city breaking and everybody shaking, staying alive, staying alive. Staying alive, staying alive.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Patriot Underground. Today is August 25th, 2024. Thank you so much for joining me, folks, to discover the truth beneath the surface. As always, I really do appreciate everybody out there taking the time to listen. And today it is my great pleasure to welcome back the one and only Lieutenant Colonel Riccardo Bosi for a second conversation. We had a wonderful first interview. I know Rick and I both felt equally blessed to have had the opportunity to make that connection and have that conversation. And I am very, very excited about having a part two tonight. And we were actually just communicating for a little while before we started recording, and there is just so much going on. We are literally witnessing and living through history right now. So, Rick, it is really exciting. It's an amazing time to be alive. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, and it's a real pleasure and privilege to be here. Thanks for joining us tonight, folks. And yeah, this is history in the making. I mean, we're accustomed to seeing those iconic pictures of Neville Chamberlain with a piece of paper, or things like that, and we're actually living it right now. And this is just extraordinary. I keep telling my people, particularly the young ones in the A1 movement, the kids that are sort of young, early 20s, late teens, early 20s, record everything you are feeling, seeing, hearing, and experiencing, because in years to come, we'll be long gone.
Yeah.
The kids and the children and grandchildren, what it was actually like, the uncertainty, the excitement, the devastation of what it was like to live through this time. And it's incredibly important that all the young people out there, anybody under the age, well, for me, anybody the age of 50 is young, but you get my drift. I'm thinking about the ones that are going to last a bit longer. Anybody in their 20s, please, and 30s, record it. And it doesn't have to, you're not writing a piece of posterity. You're writing a piece to capture what it is to be living in this moment. And the more of those we have, the better for future generations. And I mean that, because no one's going to capture the whole picture, but just your personal story, your personal experience will be of immense value in 100 years' time. It really will. So please, you are living through unique times. And I'm just blessed, and so are you, Patriot, to be around, to be playing a role in this. And so I can't believe my luck.
I feel the same way. Absolutely. And, it really is about documenting history. And when I started my channel, I'm not quite as young as the the demographic you were listing there. A little bit younger, though, than 50. I'm kind of in that mid 40 category there. But yeah, I mean, honestly, that was what it was about for me. Not really thinking that I was consciously going to be documenting history, but as my journey has gone on, that's exactly what we've all done together. Not just me, of course, but literally millions of people across the world using social media as a tool to do exactly that, because we are living through a period that even those of us who are awake and aware, I still think that sometimes it escapes us, the enormity of what we're going through, the enormity of what we're about to witness, what we're actually witnessing, and what we're building up to. And certainly that little montage that I put together about RFK joining Team Trump is something we're going to delve into that in some detail tonight. I know that Lieutenant Colonel Bosi has a whole presentation that he's going to take us through talking about the significance of that moment. So I thought I'd open up the show with that and a little bit of humor towards the end with the Staying Alive clip, but then we could maybe sort of just do an overview of some of the other things that are happening right now, because that's the other thing that I've noticed, Rick, over and over and over. It's like we have this amazing moment that happens, and we're just getting to a point where we're starting to wrap our brains around the significance of it. And then we've got like 3 or 4 other things that are absolutely massive that go right alongside it. And it just seems like that pattern is accelerating more and more with every passing day. And one of those actually was the news of the arrest of Pavel Durov, the CEO of Telegram in Paris. So I thought I could maybe pick your brain about that and maybe just get some of your initial thoughts. Obviously, this is a developing story. We're going to have to see how it all plays out. But I found it to be very, very interesting that not too long before he got arrested in France, he went on Tucker Carlson and he did a really interesting interview where he pointed out, probably, I think most of us would agree, the reason why he was actually arrested in the first place. Now, I happen to believe, as I'm sure you know, that we're essentially living through right now, what we're witnessing is a pantomime, and that ultimately the white hats are taking us through a simulation of events that is leading us up to the scare necessary event and so forth. But all of the different puzzle pieces seem to be coming together, and they're all interrelated. So let me just go ahead and play this short clip. I tried to pull it up a moment ago. I was having a little difficulty here, but okay, yeah, here we go on Telegram. And hopefully, let me just make sure this actually, oh, I'm sorry. It looks like that sound isn't going to go through. Bear with me 1 second here, Rick. My apologies. I think I have, okay, here we go. Sorry.
Too much attention from the FBI, the security agencies, wherever we came to the US. So to give you an example, last time I was in the US, I brought an engineer that is working for Telegram, and there was an attempt to secretly hire my engineer behind my back by cybersecurity officers or agents, wherever they are called.
The US government tried to hire your engineer?
That's my understanding. That's what he told me.
To write code for them or to break into Telegram?
They were curious to learn which open source libraries are integrated to the Telegram's app, on the client side, and they were trying to persuade him to use certain open source tools that he would then integrate into the Telegram's code that, in my understanding, would serve as backdoors.
Would allow the US government to spy on people who use Telegram?
The US government, or maybe any other government, because a backdoor is a backdoor regardless of who is using it.
That's right.
And
that's a little surprising to hear. Maybe it's not surprising, it's offensive. You're confident that happened?
Yes. There is no reason for my engineer to make up the stories. Also because I personally experienced similar pressure in the US. Whenever I would go to the US, I would have 2 FBI agents greeting me at the airport, asking questions. One time I was having my breakfast at like 9 a.m. and the FBI showed up at my house that I was renting. And that was quite surprising. And I thought, we're getting too much attention here. It's probably not the best environment to run.
Why would had you committed a crime?
No, they were interested to learn more about Telegram. They knew I, left Russia. They knew what we were doing, but they wanted details. And my understanding is that they wanted to establish a relationship to, in a way, control Telegram better. I understand that they were doing their job. It's just that for us running a privacy-focused social media platform, that probably wasn't the best environment to be. And we want to be focused on what we do, not on government relations of that sort.
Government
Gotta love Tucker Carlson. So yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting clip because, of course, it ties in to so many of the things we're going to be talking about. I mentioned a moment ago that all the different elements of this pantomime are interrelated. So we've got RFK out there, and he's talking about one of the main things he wants to do, and of course, he's working with Elon Musk, or as I call him, Elon Musk, toward the same goal, which is to eliminate censorship. And we've got, of course, Tucker Carlson roped into this as well, doing this interview with this gentleman, which precedes his arrest. Now, my inclination is that it's probably just a scripted event, like so many of the other things that we're witnessing. That tends to be my persuasion, as you know, I'm sure by listening to my work. I'm very much convinced that we are watching a scripted movie. There are limitations, obviously, to that. That's not to suggest that everything that we're watching is all fake and nobody's actually getting hurt and there are no real kinetic situations going on in the world, but certainly very much in a controlled and sequestered environment, those types of situations that are playing out, and so many others that are actually literally being scripted by the white hats. And this is one that I happen to believe falls into that category. So he comes out on Tucker Carlson and tells everybody that more or less that the government has been trying to get him to more or less play ball, right? To hire his or to get his engineer to behind his back to change the source code so that the government could use backdoors to spy on people. And this is coming at a time, of course, Rick, where we're having all of these revelations about the weaponization of the three-letter agencies. Of course, he mentions the FBI in that video there. So this is pretty big news, obviously. I do believe that it's going to play out in a very interesting way, that it's going to be exposing a lot of individuals even more. That tends to be the pattern that we've been witnessing over and over. But without getting too far into my analysis, I want to hear what your general reaction to this story is and how you characterize the significance of this event, if you happen to agree with me in thinking that it is significant.
Oh, absolutely, it's significant. Whenever anything occurs these days, first thing I look at is white hat, black hat. And we know it's white hat, but the reason I say white hat, black hat is because exactly which level they are now controlling is up for debate. The very low levels are still out there. They're still dangerous. But it's white hats employing black hats to do what black hats intended to do. And so this is part of the show. I agree with you entirely. I think your analysis is on the money. But what they're doing is they are revealing to the people what's been going on since forever. Everything, every agency, every business, it didn't matter what it is. Once you got to a certain level, you attract their attention and they want control. Now, the social media companies, as you know, are profoundly important in terms of gathering intelligence and data on individuals. And they, with the use of AI and very powerful computers, they can do just about anything they want to do very, very quickly. So it's logical that the black hats would try to do this. Now, we know, as I said, it's scripted, but what the white hats are showing is what the black hats have done and will have intended to do. And so people can start to think, well, if they did that with Telegram, did they do that with? And you start to fill in the blanks. And then people start to realize this is for the news for the normies. I don't mean to be condescending, but those that aren't quite there yet, to show, oh, well, something's a bit wrong with that. That doesn't sound right. And then it opens the door for the possibility that maybe it was done with other social media platforms as well, going all the big ones. And so, no, I think it is important. It is, I'm sure it's scripted, but it's a show of what has happened in the past. Now, the fact that he's been arrested, this is part two, to say, oh, why was he arrested? He's just the CEO of Telegram, says, Norm. And it opens that door, the possibility. So when people disappear, is that because they didn't play ball? Now, again, going back in time, there are countless examples of that. I don't know if you remember, some years ago, this was to do with Great Britain, UK, England, and a body was found in a sports bag, zipped up, dead in a sports bag, I think with bullet wounds to the back of its head, and it came out in the news that it was suicide. So this guy shot himself in the head and zipped himself up in a bag after he, post-mortem. Now, it's such an obvious lie. The point was very clear. We are so powerful. We can do this to this individual and get it reported across the globe as suicide. So all of you better take care. So the message was clear. And now what the white hats are doing exactly the same. They're actually using the same techniques to get a message across and say, we are now running the show. Now, there's a message for the black hats in this, the remaining black hats, and a message for the normies and for the rest of us sitting back watching the show. The multiple messages on multiple levels. But yes, it is scripted. It is revealing what's been de rigueur, what's been the standard way of doing things for the longest possible time. So it is big news, and the implications are significant for the normies watching the news.
I agree, absolutely. And I find it very interesting that they're also, I mean, of course, I didn't even mention what it is that they're charging him with. The man is facing, they're saying 20 years in prison, essentially for terrorism, weapons trafficking. More or less, they're trying to say that because he hasn't cooperated with the quote unquote authorities by giving them backdoors into the platform to use it as a tool to spy on ordinary citizens, that he's actually complicit with however that platform is being abused, which is, of course, on its face ridiculous. I mean, to suggest that, and I think most folks out there, even most of the normies would probably be able to make that connection to say, well, it's a bit extreme to give a guy 20 years in prison, especially when he hasn't actually committed any crimes. What he's done is he's said to the government, no, there are limits here. This is a free speech platform. You're not going to come on here and use it as a tool to spy on people. So this is all playing out. And I agree that, this is the script. It's designed to highlight exactly the degree of control that government agencies have over social media and the degree of control and influence they have over the general conversation, over the things that we can and cannot say. Their desire to use these agencies and all of the power and the apparatus, the military grade software, and all of the tools that they have at their disposal, not to protect us, but actually to spy on their own citizens and to in essence, to weaponize all of these different tools of power. And isn't that exactly what not only Donald Trump has been talking about for a long time, but certainly RFK, and even more recently, Elon 2.0, I should say, Elon Musk has been doing the same exact thing. That's why I was saying that it's fascinating to me to see how all of these different little vignettes that are playing out, in essence, are different scenes inside of this movie, are indeed interrelated. And I also have to say, I'll go ahead. Yeah.
No, just very quickly, I can understand there would be those that say, well, hang on a minute, we understand the need for free speech, and these are people of goodwill, they really are. But if a platform is being used for nefarious activities, shouldn't the government have the right to I don't know, subpoena perhaps some records, some data to track down these very bad people? And that's a valid point. But and here's the but. If all of these agencies were genuinely interested in stopping, or I don't know, child sex trafficking, gold trafficking, weapons, drugs, and the rest of it, maybe they should ring up the International Committee of the Red Cross. Because, ladies and gentlemen, and here's a news flash for some of you that might not know this, that is not all about saving lives. That's about collecting blood and a small percentage goes to helping people. A large percentage goes somewhere else, and you can guess where that blood might go. But on top of that, this agency gets free reign around the planet to fly in and out and do whatever it wants. And they literally ship gold, guns, drugs, and children, amongst other things, around the planet. So it's a facade. Do we have the right to free speech? Yes. Should legitimate policing agencies have the right to subpoena key information if it can be used, not a general fishing expedition, which is exactly why you have one of your amendments, to be free of unfair search and seizure, to be safe in your possessions, and there's a balance there.
Right.
But there are so many criminal activities going on under their very noses that this is complete nonsense. That Telegram is somehow the source of all our problems. Like Zuckerberg and Facebook have got nothing to do with it, of course, and Google has nothing to do with it, of course. They're all legitimate and clean and above board, please. And so that's, again, the people have to wake up and look into the Red Cross, folks. I mean it. Look into all of these wonderful agencies and you realize, my God, we've been played. And get used to that feeling, because we're going to get a lot of that over the next few months.
Oh, you better believe it. Absolutely. And, and it's an important distinction here. I mean, first of all, what they're doing is we've heard a lot and we've talked a lot about the two-tier justice system, right? but there's basically a two-tiered system across the board, and you just talked about it. I mean, the all of the criminality that we know that the big tech giants, the social media companies have been up to for years, and not one shred of accountability. But then when you have platforms like Rumble, you have platforms like Telegram, you have these new places where free speech is thriving. Now all of a sudden, oh my goodness, we've got to do something. We've got to rein this in. And I think that's to make a fairly, what should be a fairly obvious point to the public. Unfortunately, as you said, these individuals are still coming along. I don't have any problem calling them normies, but yeah, I think that's a big part of what's going on, is demonstrating those two different tiers. And also, the other point to make here is, I mean, I completely agree with you that when a situation arises that necessitates the use of warrants and subpoenas to be able to access this information, that's a totally different story than the government basically secretly just using their power carte blanche to spy and to engage in all types of nefarious activities against their own people without any kind of warrant, without any kind of really justification or accountability as well. So I think this is, again, it's all about building that narrative and exposing this to the people. And so many of the individuals, that wonderful people in our community, we get so frustrated with it because we can see it. We've been able to see it for such a long time. And we're like, okay, when are the normies actually going to get it? When are they actually going to break through and finally realize? And I think we're actually at that point, quite frankly. But we're going to get more into a more nuanced discussion on that front. But certainly a very, very interesting scenario going on there. The other issue that I wanted to touch upon just a little bit here is Elon Musk. Now, of course, he was one of the guys dancing in our little video over there as well. But this is a guy, I mean, I've talked about Elon Musk probably about as much as I've talked about Trump in the course of my podcast, just because ever since he bought X and ever since he really started making moves at the behest of the white hats, Elon Musk, basically my understanding, of course, is that they covertly took down the real Elon Musk behind the scenes and used his money, in essence, to buy Twitter, to rename it to X. And ever since then, he's really just been carpet bombing the internet with red pills on a daily basis, to the extent, I mean, I don't think there's anybody who even comes close to the influence of Elon Musk. And there are people like Joe Rogan. There are other people that I would put in that super influencer category, but Elon certainly is, I think, second to none when it comes to his ability to influence the public, given his stature and so forth. So now he's coming out, and of course, I'm sure you probably listened to the interview that he did with Trump. And what came out of that, of course, was his announcement that he would be willing to serve in a Trump administration. And isn't it interesting? All of a sudden, we're having these characters come forward. Like, who would have ever imagined that Elon Musk would step forward and say, I'm actually willing to serve in a Trump administration? So he comes out. There's this brief little clip here. Let's just go ahead and watch this, and then I'll show the image that he posted. In just
one path to prosperity, and I think Kamala is the opposite. And that's my opinion. I'm gonna get attacked like crazy. I've also experienced quite a bit of lawfare myself, but I'm just trying to tell people my honest opinion. And I haven't been really active in politics before, and I'm just trying to point out that my track record historically has been moderate, if not moderate, slightly left. And so this is to people out there who are in the moderate camp to say, I think you should support Donald Trump for president. And I think it's actually a very important junction in the road, and we're in deep trouble if it goes the other way.
Well, I want to thank you.
Okay, so he had that little clip, very interesting there. And afterward, of course, he posted this on X and said, I'm willing to serve. And this is what got me, I have to say, Rick, this has been blowing my mind, because this actually ties into Trump's reversal on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and everything else with the strategic national reserve to pay off the debt and all this, because he puts this out saying, I'm willing to serve. Now, of course, this is an AI generated image. It's pretty obvious there, but down at the bottom, there's Doge, the same name as the coin that he's been more or less backing for years now. Nobody really knew the reason why. They attributed it to the meme of the dog. That that's what Musk wanted everybody to think. But it looks pretty obvious here that Department of Government Efficiency might have been what he was referring to all along. So I saw this and I'm like, my goodness, this movie is really getting good. So we've got Musk coming forward as a potential member of his cabinet, and then of course RFK, who we're going to talk about in detail in just a moment. So give me your thoughts on Elon Musk. I mean, what's your overall viewpoint on this character?
Yeah, I didn't like Elon when he first came up because I knew you know 10 minutes grueling research on the internet will show you his background.
Yes.
He's not some clever kid that came up with something in his garage one day.
No. He was a creation, just like Zucker.
Exactly like all of them, like Gates the lot, manufactured, and that's fine. So we knew who he was. I'd happily put a bullet in the back of his head. But see, guerrilla warfare. In guerrilla warfare, you're a small team of revolutionaries, let's say, up against a large conventional force with control of the airwaves and military power. So how do you win? Well, you win by not losing. So one, you got to persist. As long as you're still there, you win by not losing. Conventional forces lose by not winning. That makes sense? That's point number one. Point number two, because you have no resources, what do? You use the resources of your adversary. So what have they done? They've gone to Elon Musk and said, we're going to take your stuff, your infrastructure. You built it. Well done. Now we're going to take it. We're going to push you off to the side, replace you, and then we're going to steer this image of Musk and his organization in the direction we want, using the adversary's resources for your advantage, to your advantage. And that's what's been going on. And now in terms of that, add to that propaganda. Propaganda is not designed to change your mind about anything. Propaganda is to use what you believe to be true against you. So there was no point trying to tell people that Elon Musk was a bad man. Let's reinforce that he's a good man and use him to swing all those people around, because it's an old saying and it's very, very true. The only thing harder than getting a new idea into somebody's head, and that is to get an old idea out. So clever propaganda, and if you understand these concepts, you look at the news, you'll understand exactly why they're doing what they're doing. It's no longer, it's frustrating because it takes too long, but you'll understand the method behind what appears to be madness. And so by doing that with Elon Musk, it's fantastic, because what people need is called social proof. They will believe it when they see it. Now, I've said this many times, and I talk about my leadership presentations and seminars. Leaders believe it before they see it. But the great mass of humanity, and there's nothing wrong with that, it's a statement of fact, because let's face it, we've all been lied to so often. We want to see proof. We want to be like St. Thomas, show me the wounds in your hands, Lord, and I'll believe that you rose from the dead. Nothing wrong with that. So social proof is someone who's done it so they believe it's true. So when Elon Musk swings around and says, well, you know, I've been moderate in politics, I'm sort of left of center, and I've got a big heart, and I like, you know, to do things. He's speaking to a very specific group that the White Hats needed to target, and by him swinging around saying, "Well, you know what, I think you're the person to back because Kamala's a bit of a problem." That social proof is critical to moving large masses of people and to make them believe it's possible. Now, let me give you a very practical example on that social proof. Before the 4-minute mile was broken, and this was long time ago, so you know, for all the young kids out there, get on the internet and check it out. The experts of the day all proudly proclaimed, and this is sort of biologists and physicians, they said the human body could not withstand the forces required to run a mile in under 4 minutes. And so everybody believed it, and so nobody broke the 4-minute mile until somebody did. And within 12 months, 3 more people broke the 4-minute mile. Why? Because they were shown it could be done. So that's Elon's job. This can be done. If someone as big and powerful and Democrat as Elon can jump that fence comfortably and do it with style, which he always does, then maybe I can too. He's giving them social proof. He's giving them permission to come across and back the unbackable Donald J. Trump. Because why? Because Elon did it. This is how a clever war is fought when the odds are against you. And let's face it, when you're dealing with an adversary that controls the entire planet, has done for thousands of years, you've got to be really clever to win this war. And the guys on our side are real smart. So 10 out of 10 to them. So that's my take on Elon. Elon Musk. I haven't heard that, but that's excellent.
I can't take credit for that. I can't take credit for that. That was, I believe it was Mike King who coined that term. But yeah, okay. I mean, I agree with you completely that what they're doing is they're taking these cult of personalities, these figures, these characters, and this is something we've seen this entire time, of course, right? With fake Biden, with all the characters that are wearing masks, is what they're doing is they're taking that persona and they're using that persona in this military operation, as you pointed out, to in essence, to, as you put it, social proof. It's a lot sounds a lot better than what I was going to say, which is basically they're making it cool to like Trump, right? Just like, you know, back in 2015, it was the most uncool thing in the world as far as the mainstream media, the tech giants, and on and on and on. I mean, you were persona non grata if you even suggested that Trump might not be Satan incarnate. That was where we were at. And now look at where we're at in 2024. Suddenly we have these people, again, these characters, because that's what they've created. And it's so brilliant the way that you put it, because yes, they were in complete dominance, in a position of complete dominance and control, with the consciousness of the public more or less latching on to these massive personalities, and pretty much like the sheep that they are, taking their direction from these people. And so if you're the White Hats, you have to think to yourself, well, you know, I'm sure we probably all agree with Rick that we would love to just put a bullet in the back of the real guy's head. But, and, you know, maybe we might even want to share that with the world, but is that ultimately the smartest move here? Is that the smartest play? Absolutely not. That would have been massively counterproductive. Again, and it goes back to, I think, that common criticism that we've had this entire time at various different points to varying different degrees, that the White Hats should be doing this, they should be doing that, and in essence, kind of criticizing their approach. Why is it taking so long, and so forth. But when you really step back and you look at what the White Hats are doing and how they're using these characters, these personas, in order to gradually and artfully move the needle on the conscience and the consciousness of the public, it's absolutely brilliant. And you can see very clearly that this is what's happening across the board. Suddenly, there are all of these people who supposedly used to be Democrats, right? Trump included, by the way, right? Some people have, gone back and there was a meme that I saw today of, like, you know, these three or four different Democrats. I think it was like Trump and RFK and Elon. And then I think there may have been like one with Joe Rogan, but all of these people who had been considered to be at best center left are now moving into the MAGA camp, and they're taking all of their followers with them very gradually. But again, they couldn't just come out overnight. You know, Elon Musk couldn't just come out overnight and say, you know what, I had a really good night's sleep last night, and I woke up this morning and suddenly I feel very differently about Donald Trump. I actually think he's a really good guy, and I think that he's going to take the country in the direction we need to go. You can't operate that way. It has to be a very gradual process. And so this is what we're seeing. But it's super exciting because, as I pointed out several times already, that all of these gradual movements in this direction that they've been kind of painstaking for us, it seems like they're all coming together in a very accelerated fashion at this point. And we're seeing the entire cultural landscape, I would say, in the United States, with every passing day, it's tangibly shifting back into the direction, of course, that ultimately the White Hats wanted it to go. So brilliant analysis as usual. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with this, Dogecoin, or if there's going to really be a Department of Government Efficiency, or what his role is going to be. And, you know, the other thing I've wondered about, and I'm kind of curious to get your take on this, because we both agree that Elon is not the real Elon. As a matter of fact, just to kind of reference a quick Q post here. This was actually one from let's see, post 571, January 21st, 2018. And this was, by the way, I did a show on this not too long ago, very shortly after Executive Orders 13818 and 13848 were signed into law in September and December of the previous year, I do believe, respectively. Q referenced the tech giants by name. Of course, we got Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, Eric Schmidt, JB. Help me out here. Well, there's Elon. Jeff Bezos. Yeah, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. This is Stephen Hoffman or something like that. I can't remember his name, but he's was the CEO of Reddit. And he's saying to all of these guys, do you know what we know? Do you know that we see all? Do you know that we hear all? Fear the storm. Nobody playing the game gets a free pass. So, and it's been said many, many times, if you're referenced directly by Q, that means you're in trouble. It's not a good thing in that context. So very, very obvious here what the White Hats were doing is they set these executive orders. They put these executive orders in place. They opened up the possibility to do exactly what we believe they did behind the scenes, which is to replace these characters. And like we said, use them to win the war in essence, which is, and how do we define that, the victory in the war? I think it was last time that you and I spoke, you defined it as the center of gravity or the high ground being the hearts and the minds and the will of the people. You simply cannot win the war unless you have all of those, you've got the critical mass of human consciousness on your side. And that's exactly how they're using these characters. Some of them alive, like RFK, and then some of them not so much, like Elon Musk. But it's, I guess the question I was coming to, and I'm sort of in a long-winded way, is that do you think at a certain point, because it's very obvious to me that we're living in a reverse PSYOP type of situation here, at a certain point, do the masks come off? Do you think, and this is speculation, of course, but if we're going to have the guy who's playing Elon Musk, who we know is not the real guy, who's wearing a mask, and of course, there's been plenty of proof of that. The most obvious was when he was at the World Cup, and you could literally see the mask line. If he's going to be serving in a Trump administration, it kind of begs the question: who's wearing the mask? Right. And then I guess a follow up to that would be, are the masks ever going to come off, or are the White Hats going to use these characters even into and after perhaps the EBS, past the scare event? Or do you think that there's going to come a time where there's going to be some level of disclosure by the military as to how they actually pulled off this operation and the fact that they had to use the art of war and deception and people in masks and things along those lines? It's kind of it's a difficult question, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a very good question, because it's one that sort of won't let me go. You know how you get a little bug in your ear, and it's like, what are they going to do? The first part of the question's easy. Disappear. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, wait, well, you dropped out for a moment there, and your camera turned off, but I can hear you now.
Here we go. Oh, maybe this is the White Hats telling me to tread carefully because I'll shut down the connection if I give too much away.
I'd like to think so. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying the first part is easy. Go ahead.
Yeah, the first part's easy in the sense that they're using force and fraud. War is a combination of force and fraud, and not my words. This is Thomas Hobbes, philosopher, and it is. And the more fraud you use, the less force you need. Now, young men like force because that's what young men are built to do. that dangerous age between about 18 and 22. All you want to do is fight, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a sound biological and evolutionary reason for that. Yes. But we're not 22 anymore, and the consequence of error is too great. So the fraud was absolutely necessary. Now, the question is this. There are a range of different characters, some of whom will be used to achieve an objective, and then when that use is now spent, the unpleasant truth might be raised about their past, and they'll say, oh, we thought he was a good guy. Oh, we found out some nasty things. We're going to try him. He's found guilty. He's executed. And so they are quite mercilessly used for a good end, if that makes sense. So some will fall into that category. The mask will come off, the truth will come out. Others, and for sound reason, although this bites a bit me, the truth might not come out because the pain of the revelation would be too great. And I personally don't like that. It smacks too much of Plato's noble lie, where the people are too stupid, so just keep lying to them, and we're smarter and better than them, and so we just won't tell them the truth. And I have philosophically, I have a profound difficulty with that. But having been married 3 times, sometimes your wife does not look big, her bum does not look big in that dress, and you just let it slide if you get the drift. But there comes a point where either we're going to stand on our own 2 feet as sovereign beings, and this sort of leads into where we're going to be speaking to shortly, or not.
Yes.
And but certainly the one way to look at this in terms of why certain truths may not be revealed yet, some certain truths may not be revealed ever, and that's a possibility too. We tend to have a very short time span when we're looking at this. We want this ended within our lifespan at least. I want it before I die, I want to see the result. The adversary does not think that way, never does. And the good Lord certainly thinks on an infinite timeline, so it makes our little lives very small. We don't like to think that we're just a tiny bit in this whole process, but we are. So what we do is part of an infinitely long plan. So whilst it might grind my gears here, that's very, very laudable, Riccardo. Well done, good chap. But understand that there's a very, very, very long timeline at play. You are playing a part. Your part is critical, all of them, even an ant on the ground. Their role is key, but it's only a small part of this infinitely long plan. So just to summarize that, there are some that'll be revealed publicly. The truth comes out. They were bad. They get charged there, and they're removed from the face of the earth. No problem. Others, I think, the truth may never come out, and the reality is, and it's just life on earth in this dimension, in this density, that there are things that are unpleasant, but that's the way life is, and the truth might not ever come out. And there's from the level of judgment and discernment that the White Hats have demonstrated so far, I think they're going to make the right call on that. Whether we personally don't like a person, would like to see them exposed, the cost to the operation is too great, if that makes sense. So that's the best analysis I can give you on that. That's the way I see it.
Well, I agree with you, and I think it kind of comes back to that classic. I don't know. I think it's this conflict that so many of us have had, which is the morality, our own personal sense of morality versus practicality and logically what is going to get us across the finish line. How are we going to achieve victory, and what does victory really even mean? What does it really look like? I mean, that we could probably do an entire show discussing that philosophically, right? Yeah. And possibly maybe we could at some point. But I think that my general, at least initial reaction to that type of a question is that there are levels of priority, right? They can only reveal certain things at certain points, because the people, whether or not we want to believe it or agree with it or argue with them all day long, I think they're in a better position to be able to gauge what the public is actually ready for versus all of us out here in
man, yes, so much on them.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Oh no, I've had some exchanges in the last couple of weeks, and it's almost like I was shown individuals that are so deeply resistant to information, just to get me out of my ivory tower, get back on earth and realize what we're dealing with. And the people we deal with in A1, we're awake, they're good people, they're on the front foot, they're ready to go, they're resilient, they're tough, they can take the bad news. And then in short order, I ran into 4 or 5 people, and it wasn't an accident, I'm sure of it. And I just said, my God, oh, wow, we are so far worse off than I thought we were. Just when I think I've got a handle on the depth of ability of the people to handle something, I get shown something completely different. I realize, okay, got it. Take your time. Long plan, small part, do your bit. and just be a little bit humble about the value, or even the morality. That's a good topic to discuss. Even my take on what morality is, man, that's the toughest of tough discussion points. Again, not just within our lifespan or the lifespan of Christianity or the lifespan of human habitation or the lifespan of the universe. Man, that is a tough call. That is a really tough call. But yeah, no, the more I see, and let's finish on this one, the more I see of the judgment of the white hats, the more I trust that they have got this exactly right.
I agree. Absolutely. And, it comes down to, I think, the question of, what's ultimately more important. Is it disclosure of the full truth of all the details of all the questions that we've been wondering about and pondering over these past several years, or is it achieving the goal of unity and unification of the people? I'll let me pause here for just a moment.
Okay, we're back. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. All right. No,
that's okay. I could hear you. The camera just changed inputs for some reason. Maybe the white hats are saying, "Well done, you got past that."
You did. Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think it really comes down to that. Is disclosure, and this is what we want inside of the truth community for the most part. Is we want disclosure. We want the truth on all fronts, and I think for good reason. But the larger picture here, I think the bigger goal is to unify the country, and by extension, really to unify the human race. I mean, we've been so divided for such a long time that I think ultimately that is the priority. You have to unify the people first, and then you can gradually be able to gauge their level of consciousness and the degree to which they can embrace those types of truths. I don't have a problem with, even if it's like 10 years, 20 years after the operation ends, where these details start to leak out. Like, oh yeah, that those people were actually in masks. But at that point, it'll be an entirely different type of conversation. I think there are tiers and there are levels, and the white hats are the ones who are in the best position to be able to make judgment calls on that, and not us. We can certainly opine on it, and should, but we're not the ones who are in that position to make that call, and for good reason. And I think we have to, we really have to respect that. So
I agree.
Okay,
there's a good analogy. There's a good analogy just on that. Moses, leading the Israelites out of Egypt, wanted the desert for 40 years before they were allowed the promised land. Now, whether that's true or not is not the point, but just take that as the story, right?
Right.
Why would you wander the desert for 40 years before you went into your new homeland? A very practical reason. Because all the people that understood slavery and the ones that said, we might have been slaves, but at least we were fed and watered, which is what actually happened when they wanted to go back, because it got a bit tough at one point. Over that 40 years, those generations all passed, and they had new generations of young people who grew up, who knew nothing but freedom. Now, it's a brutal way to do it, but think about the impact on the mindset, the psychology, the expectations of those people as they moved into their promised land. What were they going to do? They were going to fight for the freedom they knew all their lives. And all the people that had been slaves, who knew about slavery, who were comfortable with slavery, all gone. And so think about us right now. We have generations of people who are very comfortable being slaves. Just give me my TV, give me my football. I'll turn up to work. I'll meet my work obligations. I'll only spend 2 hours a day with my children. I'll give them for 8 hours a day to somebody else, because that's normal to them. We can't have that. We need to use time. As I say to my children whenever we're discussing how to solve a problem, always remember the power of time and silence. Never disregard those two inputs, because they're extremely powerful. Now, time, we'll see by natural attrition, the population change. Now, the youth that is watching this now, they have to come and see that they're going to experience a whole new world. They will not know the world that I grew up in. Now, I'm 64 years old, so I've been around the buoy a few times. The world I grew up in disappeared, and then we're somewhere else, but we're going to create a whole new world. And just on that, what Australia One is doing isn't our view of the perfect world. It is just a step in the direction towards the promised land, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And that's what people have to understand. We're on this very long journey. We all have a part to play at a point in time. Now, we've got in 100 years, maybe in 100 years, we'll have a population that has never known slavery. And when it's raised with them, and when they read the books about what it was like to live in, 1987, they'll look back and go, "Are you kidding me? How dumb were these people? They really put up with this shit." So anyway, let's hope we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, on that note, I think this is a really, it's a nice segue into the big topic that we're going to be talking about, which is RFK and his announcement that he was not only ending, of course, his campaign, but he was going to be supporting Trump. And then, of course, he came out subsequently and said, "I'm actually going to be campaigning with Trump. And oh, by the way, there are going to be more and more surprises. Stay tuned. There are going to be more Democrats who are going to be jumping ship and coming on to Team Trump as well." Now, I have to say that the minute he came out and entered the presidential race, I almost immediately, just intuitively, my spidey senses are going off, and I'm going, "This guy's read in. There's no way that that all of a sudden we have a Kennedy who's showing up to challenge Trump after the election was clearly stolen from him, and all these things." So they created all of these optics. Of course, Trump came out. Kennedy came out and attacked Trump. Likewise, Trump did the same. Like we've seen happen over and over and over again. That's what Trump does, is he creates camouflage, more or less, by coming out and making public statements about a lot of individuals who are secretly part of the plan behind the scenes, which gives them a lot more, credibility at that specific period in time, but also a lot more leeway to be able to function as a part of this military operation. So suffice to say, I saw this coming from a mile away. I believed wholeheartedly that we were going to see RFK join forces with Trump, and that's exactly what's happened. And I also stated at the time that really his function, his role was going to be to unify the country, because here's an individual who, yes, on certain issues has radically different viewpoints than your average conservative out there. But when it comes to the three-letter agencies, when it comes to big pharma, when it comes to wanting to end the perpetual wars, when it comes to wanting clean food and clean water, when it comes to wanting a better future for our children, all of these things, these are issues that unite every one of us, not just Americans, but literally freedom-loving people the world over. These are concepts that you really can't even argue with. And you heard them in that opening montage that I played in the beginning. Don't you want healthy children? Don't you want clean food? Don't you want clean the government to stop spying on you? All of these things. And it's like, these are ideas that appeal across the board. So that's clearly that was his role. And what's even more beautiful is that he's only taking his name off the ballot in the battleground states so that those votes could go to Trump. And we're already seeing his followers move in that direction. Again, all part of the movie, all part of the script, the pantomime, in my view. But this is a massive, massive move. And quite frankly, I think one of the most important moments in this entire journey, people are going to look back on this as being the beginning of where we saw the country start to come together. And, giving full credit to my friend Dave and our mutual friend Dave over at News Treason. He posted on the other day. Let me just go ahead and pull it up right here. This was post 4908. So let's just go ahead and take a look at that really quickly. Post 4908 tells us that, actually, you know what? Let me pull it up here. This will be easier, because I'm having trouble pulling up Telegram tonight for whatever reason, folks. So just bear with me. All right. So here it is. Post 4908 talks about exactly what RFK is doing. So here it is. The Great Awakening. Sometimes you can't tell the public the truth. Sometimes you must show them. Of course, we've quoted that God knows how many times at this point. Only then will people find the will to change. Now, here's where the interesting part comes in here. Crimes against children unite all humanity, cross party lines. Difficult truths. And one of the things that Dave pointed out, of course, that this is the most clear example of seeing party lines being crossed for the greater good. And you'll notice also, I mean, there are many different clips of RFK's speech both that day and at the Trump rally, but he mentioned children many times. Of course, he didn't talk about human trafficking. He didn't talk about satanic ritual abuse. He didn't talk about the really dark, evil stuff that we know is ultimately we're going to get there. But he's appealing to that sense of decency inside of all of us. And he actually said it at one point, I think, he said the only thing that's ultimately going to save us is if we decide that we're going to love, that we love our children more than we hate each other. And so he's appealing to that sense, that humanity and that sense of decency inside all of us, having to do, relating that back to our most precious asset, which is our children. I think that this is a precursor to some much larger disclosure as well. So on that note, let me just go ahead and play it's like a minute clip, and then I'm going to pass the baton over to you to talk about RFK. So here we go.
Agencies, the FDA, USDA, and CDC, all of them are controlled by giant for-profit corporations. 75% of the FDA's funding doesn't come from taxpayer, it comes from pharma. And pharma executives and consultants and lobbyists cycle in and out of these agencies with President Trump's backing. I'm going to change that. We're going to staff these agencies with honest scientists and doctors who are free from industry funding. We're going to make sure the decisions of consumers, doctors, and patients are informed by unbiased science. A sick child is the best thing for the pharmaceutical industry. When American children or adults get sick with a chronic condition, they're put on medication for their entire life. Imagine what will happen when Medicare starts paying for Ozempic, which costs $1,500 a month, and it's being recommended for children as young as 6, all for a condition, obesity, that is completely preventable and barely even existed 100 years ago.
All right, so one of many clips. There are so many others. I had a difficult time whittling them down, but you and I were talking about this. This is a very emotional moment for the American people. The issues that this man is raising and bringing to the fore, as Trump said, have been for far too long ignored in this country and really around the world. Of course, we've got, I think there are 30 countries that the United States, the chemicals that we use in our food is banned in 30 other countries. And so, he's bringing all of these issues to the fore. But again, in the larger scope, this has to do with the unification of the American people. Remember, Q told us that America will be united again. So with that said, you had a lot of very interesting thoughts that you wanted to share with the audience. I believe a little slideshow as well. So I'm going to pass it over to you now, Rick, and just hand you the baton and lay it on us.
Thanks, mate. Well, very quickly before we get to the slides, just on RFK, you are exactly right. This is the seminal moment of this whole war. This is what is called the Schwerpunkt, the critical point in the battle. And at this moment, the battle was it was already won. I get that. But this was the moment where they've telegraphed to everybody on the planet, and this is a planetary thing. They telegraphed to everybody on the planet, this is the moment we are bringing everybody together. Now, just go back a step. Now, RFK was running independent, and he said that the DNC, and this is important because this is that journey that we spoke about earlier, where he takes the people from where they are to where we want them to be, if that makes sense. So he's running as an independent, no problem. He made the statement the DNC is not representative of the people. And there's enough evidence out there on YouTube, all these Democrats just fed up. His former running mate, Nicole Shanahan, she outlined all the dirty tricks the DNC had tried to derail them. Infiltration, false allegations requiring some sort of legal response, lawfare. Deplatforming them, shadow banning them, claiming there was no path to victory. And so once again, what they're doing is they're showing the usual Democrat voters that maybe the DNC isn't what it should be, and it's not behaving the way it should. And so then, as everybody knows, he comes out and he says he's joining the Trump campaign. And you're exactly right. That one word, unify the country. Unity is the theme. Let's bring it together. And it's not a perfect analogy, but it's like watching the kids watching mum and dad have a fight, and it just tears them apart. And this fight has been going around the world for decades and decades. There's just two sides, and you're either with me or you're against me. And that unity, when the fight's over and the family is back as one, is a sweet moment. As children, I'm sure you can all remember that moment where mum and dad were having one of those energetic discussions that doesn't leave anybody feeling good. But when the heat finally dies down and the anger is gone and we get back to sitting around the dinner table and laughing and giggling and talking and having fun as a family, that joyous moment when that comes back again, that's what we're all experiencing. And this is critical.
Absolutely.
This is absolutely critical. Now, let me get on to, actually now we'll show the slide, because here's why this is important. And it's not just a matter of unity. We all want unity. It's more sophisticated than that, and it must be. And the White Hats are well ahead of us in all of this. And you can see this moment is presaging. This is showing where we're going to go, because the big picture statements always sound good. And in the military, we call it big hands on small maps. You move your division there, I'll move my division here, and we'll meet in the middle and we'll destroy the bad guys, which is great. And all these soldiers down the bottom, how the hell did we going to do this? Because it's easy when you've got the big map. But in the military, we always plan 2 levels down. That way, whenever you give, you know that the mission or the strategy you've defined is achievable tactically, like they can actually do it. Down to the level where, for example, the beaten zone for the beaten zone for a light artillery regiment is 150 by 150. So you know that if you've given the regiment a target bigger than 150 by 150 meters, it's not going to do the job. You've got to know the capabilities of everything you've got around you. And I hope I got that right, because I'm sure I'm getting 1,000 emails from people saying it's not 150 by 150, it's more than that. But I'm digging back into the archives for that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. So what are they advancing? What does this mean in policy terms? Because I'd love to be the great unifier, but I'm not. My job is to break heads, is to lay out a mechanical, practical path for the people can like or dislike, but at least they get it. You know, I'd love to be the great unifier, but not my job. So let me now just share this screen. And yep, we got that. Where are we? Entire screen. Brilliant. Screen 1, screen 2. Well, we'll try screen 1.
All right. Let's see if I pull it up here.
Can you see that at all?
Yeah, we got factions.
Great. Let me see. Okay, here we go. That should fill the screen shortly. No, you've got the whole thing there, haven't you?
Yeah, I got the whole thing. But if you, is there a way?
We recently shifted to Linux. We recently shifted to Linux, and it's causing me no end of grief. Hang on.
Okay.
Right, I'll be right back. Apologies for the appalling. There we go. Oh, look at that.
Oh, that's
I
right.
do have it.
All right. Looks like we lost Rick for a moment.
Unity. The subject is unity. Unity as a nation. Unity of our goals and our objectives, what we want to go, where we want to be. Now, your founding fathers understood the danger of factions. Factions. Donald Trump has made the statement, no more political parties. Now, that's going to give everyone conniptions, because the first thing they're going to do, particularly the haters, will be that we're now talking about a single party state and it's fascism and it's Adolf Hitler and we told you all. No, that is not what it's saying. A country is unified when it has a clear objective of what it wants to be. How you get there, that's where your policy discussion comes in. So this is this unity push, no more political parties. Now, Federalist 10, the Federalist paper, again, and I don't mean to lecture the Americans on your own history, but unfortunately some of you have forgotten it. The Federalist papers were written by a group of individuals who were making the case to support the acceptance of a federal government, because the states were jealously guarding their sovereign rights as individual sovereign states, and so they should. And so they wrote the Constitution and the way the government should be run in a federal sense, but they had to sell the idea, and the Federalist papers were that. Now, Federalist 10 spoke on factions. It's an essay written by James Madison as the 10th Federalist paper, series of essays initiated by Hamilton arguing for the ratification of the US state's constitution, as I just said. It's actually, 10 is actually called The Utility of the Union as a Safeguard Against Domestic Faction and Insurrection. So they're saying that the Union, having this federal national perspective, is a safeguard against domestic faction and insurrection. 10 shows an explicit rejection by the founding fathers of the principles of direct democracy and factionalism, and argue that Madison suggests that the representative republic is more effective against partisan and factionalism. That's absolutely true and necessary. Because let me just go back now very quickly. I'm going to read this to you. Politics should be about the national interest, but it tends to be about individual interests. And here's a document from Select Documents in Australian History, 1851 to 1900. And it's about a gentleman called George Higginbotham, who was asked by a group of individuals to lead their political party. And he says, he rejected the whole idea, but basically he said, a master of politics has defined a political party to be a body of men and women united for promoting by their joint endeavors the national interest upon some principle in which they are all agreed. And he goes on to say that there is no unity. In our own history in Australia, as soon as we had our own constitution in 1901, the two major thrusts of political debate was the protectionists and the free traders. That's not a national question. That's not a national goal which they wish to achieve. These are discussions of sectarian private interest. And that's what factionalism has done. And that's what we in this country and around the world have had. We've been forced, you're either with us or against us, but it's never against the national interest. And there are people who are for the national interest, but they are not united. So political parties, as they have been practiced and are not recognized in the Australian Constitution, for example, have divided us. Now, Trump has said no more political parties. Now, there's point number one. Point number two, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Those famous lines from the Declaration of Independence. Well, maybe, because they don't wash in the 21st century, certainly not in Australia, as we're advancing our nation into a constitutional republic, because the world has changed. Now, when those words were written in the US, you were largely a Christian country. You had many sects of Christianity, and they were fighting and hanging each other. And that's why they said, you know what, religious freedom, absolutely. And we all agree that it's self-evident that all men were created equal and were endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, that statement doesn't wash, both logically nor practically in the modern world, because we have a range of people from a range of countries, and we have no problem with that, with a range of belief systems, and that's fine too, except Christians hold those truths to be self-evident, but Judaism doesn't, because it's a supremacist religion. Hinduism doesn't, because it's a supremacist religion. Islam doesn't, because it's a supremacist religion. So that statement, as beautiful as it is, and I love it, no longer holds water. You couldn't put that up at the beginning of a constitutional convention and have agreement. You'd stumble at the first hurdle. So what do? And this is where I'm going to use Australia 1 as an example, but this applies to every man and woman on this planet right now and every country's future. We have stated our philosophical position. It's to save Australia. The method is to create a moral political party which empowers all Australians to reach their highest individual potential so that collectively all may participate in the reformation of Australia. Now, here's what counts. The end state. What are we working towards? What's this goal that we're all working towards as a unified nation? We're a moral, sovereign, self-reliant Christian Western constitutional republic, which is economically powerful, militarily intimidating, politically free, culturally vibrant, and socially cohesive. So there we have a statement of philosophy, a goal to which we are working. Now, how we get there, that's where you get your discussion. The discussion shouldn't be, what sort of country do we want to build? You'll never get there, because with this, what has been multicultural has just ripped everybody apart by design. By design. Now, what's key is this, and I know this seems to be a very long, slow journey, but bear with me because it's worth the trip. A socially cohesive country, if we do not have the same beliefs in the Creator, then we will never have a socially cohesive country. Now, in our sense, what we say, for example, is you may practice whatever religion you like. You may bow your head, your heart, and your soul to whomever you wish, except for Satanists, maybe, with a special place in hell for them. But your actions must be in accordance with Australian secular law, which is based on a Christian ethic. And so we accommodate. Now, that's just ours. Let's get to sovereignty, because this gets back to every individual. We've got this unity. We've got to come together. But we must have this philosophical discussion. What is sovereignty? Who is sovereign? From where does it derive? And what are the limits to it? Now, this is part of what I'm doing for A1 and establishing the discussion points. Now, we in the Christian world, all people are sovereign. We reject the concept of divine right of kings, which states that by virtue of royal birth, a king or queen is God's representative and has the right to absolute rule. That's from Black's Law Dictionary. Well, we reject that because a Christian nation believes that all people are equal. Not all nations are Christian. They don't believe all people are equal. We do. Good news is you can live in Australia, be another religion, and enjoy the benefits. We're not proselytizing for Christianity. We're just saying, you know what? You don't think we're all equal, but we do, and our laws are based on that, and you can benefit from that. Because we believe that all are made in the image of God. Imago Dei, the image of God. We all have that divine spark. That's why we are equal. Some are short, tall, fat, thin, black, white, makes no difference. Smart, dumb, makes no difference. We all have our rights. We are all sovereign, and we believe that we all have the right to life, liberty, and property. And you can't muck around with that because we are all equal. This is very difficult. Who is the sovereign? The sovereign's the source of law. Sovereigns get to make laws. We have an image of kings and queens passing laws. Their word is law. Well, that's you. Now, this might sound old hat to Americans, but not to the rest of the world. Now, there is only one sovereign from whom all law derives, a powerful intelligence outside of space-time, energy, and matter. It goes by many names: God, source energy, the Almighty. That's the only sovereign that exists. Now, that is because 90% of the planet believes that. Well, it's probably closer to say 70% believe that, 20% aren't quite sure, they're agnostics, and the rabid atheists are about 10%. But most of the planet believes that. There's only one sovereign. But we believe that all people are sovereign because that's basically been delegated to us. None may interfere with another's rights without cause. Limited sovereignty has been delegated to us. Now, why am I going down this path? Because I'm going to get back to unity. Just keep in mind that word unity. How do we form this unity? How do we form a unified nation? We believe our sovereignty and rights are God-given, can't be taken away. We make laws. But what are the limits to our sovereignty? What laws may we make? Now, what I've done here is I have categorized laws. Now, this is flying in the face of thousands of years of erudition by men and women much cleverer than me. But unfortunately, we're at a place where it needs to be simplified so people can understand what sovereignty is in a practical sense, because we get a lot of common law people that wave Article 61 of Magna Carta, say, I have the right to lawful rebellion, I am a sovereign, and that's about as far as they go. So let's break it down a bit. And this is just my definition, and it's a start point for discussion. I've said there's three types of law: divine law, natural law, and human law, because we need to figure out where we fit into this world. And this is fundamental. We get agreement on something like this, then we can move forward. But if we don't get this right, then we have nothing but fractious arguments from now to the end of time. So I've defined divine law as the rules established by God, which regulate the behavior of all life, from instinct to conscious morality. Life is God's purview, nobody else's. Now, we've had some nonsense about a chemical soup with an electric current passed through it, and the basic elements of life are created by that, and that's how life formed on Earth. That was rubbish years ago when it came out, and it's subsequently been proven to be complete rubbish now, as has evolution, yet it's continually played into the minds of children to believe that's true. No, life is God. We can muck around with the building blocks, and that's been happening for thousands of years as well, depending on your understanding of the history of Earth. But nobody creates life but God. So, life's that's his rule. He deals with life. Now, moving on. Our understanding of divine law, and this is just me, it's just a start point, is derived by revelation. That's where it comes from. So we've got to be connected. Natural law. These are the rules established by God which regulate the functioning of the universe. Things like the change of seasons to the speed of light. Right? You're not going to get 3 summers, no winters, a couple of springs. As Jim Rohn says, you can't mess with that stuff. These are the rules within which we have to live, and we learn from natural law. It's derived by observation and reason. So far, so good. You don't have to agree, but at least you're following the logic. Yeah. And then we're left with human law. So what's human law? The rules divide by human to regulate human behavior. That's it. That is it. It is informed by the cumulative wisdom of human experience of both divine and natural law. So over time, over the thousands of years, as we experience and write and learn and pass on our lessons to our young and so on, this cumulative wisdom drawn from both divine law, revelation, natural law, observation, and reason, we can start to inform human law. Does God care whether the speed limit is 60 or 80? No. But if you make the speed limit 100 in front of a school, you're going to learn from trial and error that probably wasn't the best thing to do. Mm-hmm. Our understanding is derived by trial and error. And that's where we live. Now, all this is critical to this issue of a unified nation. Now, moving on, and I'm sorry if this sounds like a lecture, but ladies and gentlemen,
this is
really
great.
Important.
I'm just sitting here listening and observing and taking it all in. So yeah, continue. It's fascinating.
Brilliant. Okay. So what's our status? We've discussed now law and what our realm of law is. We can't muck around with life. We can't muck around with nature, but we can muck around to control each other's behaviors. That's what it is all about. Because you have your rights, and if anybody imposes upon them, you get to moderate their behavior. So what's our status? Are we subjects? In Australia, we reject, as we said, the concept of the divine right of kings. That's just nonsense. We are not subjects who owe allegiance to a sovereign, because that's what a subject is. Okay, Black's Law Dictionary. A subject who owes allegiance to a sovereign. We reject that. Well, citizens, are we citizens? And this is going back now to Black's Law Dictionary about a republic. A citizen is one who, by either birth or naturalization, is a member of a political community owing allegiance to that community. Well, I've got a few alarm bells going off already. And also a term usually employed under a republican form of government as the equivalent of a subject in monarchies. So let me just dive into my handy Black's Law Dictionary, just to prove I'm not making this stuff up. And it is defined, republic, a system of government in which the people hold sovereign power, good so far, and elect representatives who exercise that power. It contrasts on one hand with a people or community as an organized whole wields sovereign power of government, and on the other hand is the rule of one person, such as a king, or an elite group, such as an oligarchy or aristocracy or junta. Now, unfortunately, the people in the US believe that they are living and working under that definition. You haven't for some time. Well, you know that, Patriot, but most people don't. Because the practical application of life in the US is that you are basically subjects of the government. You are subjects of a cabal. You are subjects because whatever mechanisms were put in place for you to practice that, or if make effect that sovereignty of yours, has been so castrated that it is no longer practical. Mm-hmm. The citizens of the US, unfortunately, are the equivalent of subjects. All, and this is just my statement here, all should reject being citizens who owe allegiance to a community, because that's just the rule of the mob.
Yep.
So what have I come up with? We are a native sovereign people, and so are you. A native sovereign people. Native sovereign people. We got the definition of native and sovereign people, and we said, you know what, let's put those two together. A native is a person whose national origin derives from a person having born within a particular place. Again, Black's Law Dictionary. Good so far. There are some exceptions, anchor babies, and the practicalities, and they have to be dealt with. And a sovereign people is a political legal body consisting of a collective number of native people who possess the powers of sovereignty and exercise them through their chosen representatives. Now, if we, all of us on this planet, decide that we are native sovereign people, all of a sudden our perspective changes. Now, it is incumbent upon us to decide for ourselves the nature of the nation we wish to create. What is this polity, this political existence that we need to create? Now, it's not as simple as it sounds, because we're not starting from a blank sheet of paper. We have had that idea smashed beyond recognition by the cabal for decades and decades and decades. That's why they have had through. So let me go back. I'm jumping ahead of myself here. So we are all, every man and woman on this child, are native sovereign people who owe their allegiance to a constitution enumerating our God-given rights. Again, that's common currency in terms of discussion in the US, but most of the planet does not understand that, nor could they accept it. That is just like living on Mars. To tell them that you are a native sovereign people who owe your allegiance to a constitution which enumerates God-given rights. We've all been born in native lands. We have a native land with our culture, our native land with our language, our native land with our history, our native land with our faith. And our native land is being stolen from us. You in the US, us in Australia, and the rest of the world as well. Your native sovereignty is being stolen, robbed of our birthright. Now, wars and forced migrations are moving countless people from their lands onto other people's lands. That's how it's been happening for the longest possible time. Both peoples are being used against each other for evil reasons, both those that live in that land and the ones that are invading that land. The wars are unnecessary, and so is the migration, which creates the conditions for future conflict. Are all wars unnecessary? Absolutely not. Sometimes you must deliver lethal force against those who have forfeited their right to live amongst us. But we know that most of these wars are utterly unnecessary, and so is the migration, which creates the conditions for future conflict. For example, let's examine the Islamic State in the Levant and the war on Syria. Now, I want to use this as a descriptor, as a general descriptor or model for what's been done to us for a long, long time. Okay. Oh, there, the map is messed up. That shouldn't be like that. But we'll continue. We'll see how it works. Let me just stop presenting for a minute. Just bear with me for a moment. Talk amongst yourselves. Smoke them if you got them. I just need to get this.
No, this is fascinating. While you're getting kind of, you're regrouping over there, but taking the sort of larger concepts that we were talking about and really breaking it down in a much more practical manner, I guess you could say. And this is exactly what you do over at A1. I mean, you're a national leader for good reason, explaining all of these things. And I think you also made a really good point about the having the foundation of our society, of our well, in your case, Australia, in my case, the United States, being founded on a Christian ethic, because that's in essence ultimately where everything flows from. You can't have a supremacist type of, as you put it, a supremacist type of religion and expect that you're going to have a culture and a society that is at odds with the teachings of that religion as one people being above all the rest. And so that's something that really stuck out to me as well. Amongst other things, I've been over here taking notes on your presentation. So
Excellent.
no, I love it. I love it. It's like sitting in on a class with a very gifted professor who's laying it all out for us.
No, I'm just a simple soldier. But anyway, thank you for that. What I'll do now is it's not functioning the way it should, but so I'm going to continue. You're going to see the whole slide with the bits and pieces as well. That's the only way I can actually get this done, unfortunately. But it'll be worth the journey. And when I put it up, I'll put it up so people can actually go through the building of those slides properly. So just bear with me for a second. Oh, hang on. No, it won't work. All right. I thought I had another idea, but no. We're just going to have to suck it up. Okay, here we go. Okay, so let me know when you can see the screen.
Okay, let me pull it up. Here we are.
Okay, now Unfortunately, the slides had a lovely, everything was phasing in and out as required, but you've got the single slide there. Okay, this is the area known as the Levant. That's from the French word meaning to rise. That's where the sun rose in the east. And it comprised all that area roughly. It's an ill-defined piece of terrain. And you can see the countries that are involved: Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Cyprus, mainly, and on the borders, Turkey, Egypt, Saudi, Kuwait, Iraq, and Iran. So that's when we say the Levant, that's what we're talking about. Now, that's the Islamic State in the Levant was the name that was adopted over time. Originally, it was an Islamic State and ISIS, and it became ISIL. Now, here's Syria. You can see on the side here, you've got the rebels, the loyalists, the Rojava, and the foreign forces. And this is what Syria looked like. And this is what's left, and we'll be covering Iraq shortly. But you can see these different ethnic and religious groups. Now, how do you create a nation state out of this? Well, there was no interest in creating a nation state because only the cabal has been causing these wars since forever, and the intention was to continue to allow those wars to progress, because it was worth their money to do so. It was worth their time and to do it. So I'm gonna have to play this, just see if we can get this happening so you can see these slides develop. Okay. Now, I remember back in 2015, and I'm watching the TV. I'm now a retired lieutenant colonel. I've just come back from 5 years in the Middle East with their Special Operations Command right in that area. And I'm watching the news, and all of a sudden I see pictures like this, and the world is in shock and horror at this apparently professional organization, heavily armed, all driving Toyotas, and thinking, my God, they can't be stopped. And I remember thinking to myself, you're going to be kidding me. a couple of AH-64s, Apaches would make short order of the whole bloody thing. This was nothing but propaganda, and I knew it. And I started asking questions, and thankfully, so did some other people. How did ISIS get so many Toyota trucks? Well, it's not an accident. Now, Toyota themselves said, well, we don't know. We have no idea. We don't track things like sales, do we? No, that couldn't be true. So people were making money. This was a complete show, absolute show. The invincible ISIS. What else did they have? They had a passport industry allowing the production of professional passports, allowing the belligerents to enter any country they wished unimpeded. And so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a group has the sophistication to pull together this sort of activity. So sophisticated are these groups of people wearing rags on their heads, and I'm not saying that as an insult to those that wear a kandura. I'm just saying that that's the mentality of the people that will be being shown to you, and there's no way they could have done this. Making $3 million a day selling oil, really? Now, how does a group of revolutionaries have that level of sophistication? Well, let's have a look. Oil production, refining, distribution, smuggling through Turkey, Jordan, Iraq, and Iran. So everybody's making good money. It was a show. It was a real show, unfortunately, which destroyed Syria, because you saw the condition they were in, and you can see how challenging it would be for them to, in a cohesive way, resist an invasion. So let's say we're going to move an operation. This is me on a Sunday afternoon, bored, retired colonel. What do? Well, of course, I knock up some quick termination criteria and a military solution to the problem. Military, and there's be followed by diplomatic as well. I'm showing you both because I want you to realize that you have seen wars being fought badly and never allowed to end, because the intention of the cabal was to create the conditions for the next war. If you unleashed us and we fought a war according to laws of war, it would be short, brutal, and we would win. But they never show you that. They always tell you, oh, it can't be done. Well, here's your termination criteria if you wanted to sort out Syria. The Islamic Caliphate no longer poses a threat. Syria's borders are secure. Hostilities between competing forces in the civil war have ceased, and refugee movements out of Syria have halted. Now, once we achieve that termination criteria, we won. So the military then gets to work and does that. Now, bags of gold. Wars are fought by many ways, folks. Yes, there are well-trained men, heavily armed, moving into land and securing it. But commanders that deploy overseas also have large bags of gold, because you can achieve a lot with that. For example, we were in the Afghan with a particular nation, and they made sure that the local troublemakers didn't give us any trouble locally, and they did that by paying them bags of gold, and they were more than happy with that. So understand that it's not as clear cut as it seems. Western political will, combined with leadership from an Islamic coalition, termination criteria such as these are achievable. You've never seen it, doesn't mean it can't be done. Well, you have seen it, because guess what? That's exactly what Donald J. Trump did. Within short order of getting into the presidency, he brought Israel and the United Arab Emirates to the same table. He stepped across from South Korea into North Korea. So all these allegedly unwinnable wars or tensions that could never be relieved were there by design, by the cabal. It was fake. It was false. Mm-hmm. It could have been done. It could have been done. So, oh, this might work. Thank you. Someone's. Thank you, God. So I'm going to show you the ground war. This is the plan that I knocked up because I figured it can be done. A bunch of guys with 12.7s in Toyotas does not constitute a real threat. It was there because it was allowed to be there. So I came up with the ground war, and then I'll talk about the diplomatic solution for the Reconstruction. Again, just to demonstrate it can be done. You just haven't seen it done. So let's look at the terrain. There's the Syrian terrain. There's the rebels. There's the Kurds up north, the green. That's what's left of Iraq. And there's ISIL. So they don't pay much attention. Now, this was the unbeatable, undefeatable, incontrovertible presence of ISIS. What rubbish. Now, the mission, secure the boundaries. This is the preliminary operations prior to the actual offensive phase. Establish the following defensive positions from Turkey, Jordan, Saudi, the Kurds, and Iraq. So if you have a look, there's up to the north, there's the Turkish defensive position. Down south, the Jordanian border, Saudi Arabia, the Kurds operating with the Kurds and with the Iraqis. And the final borders will be formed by the assault force once they've reached their limit of exploitation. That's the barn. We're going to lock the barn door so nobody can get out. And here's a civilian description of the operation you're about to see. Lock the barn door, get the anvil, put the bad guys on the anvil and smash them with the hammer, and we're going to do it 3 times. Now, here we go. We're going to establish supporting ground assets for defensive positions, establish the assault force in the assembly areas, and establish a safe zone. So that's you can see on the map there. That's the phase location of the assault force, the assembly area, and the direction of the assault. Now we're going to establish a safe zone to minimize civilian casualties during the phase, the conflict phase itself. So here's ground war phase 1. Mission: secure Syria. Execution: 2 simultaneous assaults on 2 axes. An amphibious assault from the west launched from the Mediterranean. An armored mechanized infantry air assault from the southwest launched from Jordan. So we've got the barn is shut, and here comes the hammer landing on the anvil. And there is the assault troops on the limit of exploitation, locking them in. Tasks: destroy ISIL in Syria with ground-air assets, deny ISIL escape routes into Iraq with air assets, establish defensive position along the Syria-Iraq border. So that's phase 1. Phase 2, mission: secure northern Iraq. Execution: 2 simultaneous assaults on 2 axes with Baghdad-Qaim Road as the objective. Armored mechanized infantry air assault launched from north of Baghdad, moving north and sweeping southwest, swinging that up and then down. And an armored mechanized infantry assault launched from south of Baghdad. And they reached the limit of their exploitation. They shut the door as well. Their task was to destroy ISIL in the north of Iraq with ground-air assets, establish a defensive position on the Baghdad-Qaim Road, and destroy ISIL elements which escape into western Iraq with air assets. Phase 3, mission: secure western Iraq. Assault on 3 axes with the Syria-Iraq border as the objective. Armored mech inf air assault launched from South Iraq, moving northwest. destroy ISIL in North Iraq ground air assets, link up with the defensive position on the Syria-Iraq border. And there you have it, folks. There is just one description of one way to have solved it, like an unbeatable problem, in a quite straightforward way. Any general worth his salt could have knocked one of those up in no time. And I'm just a simple soldier bored on a Sunday afternoon. You've never seen it because you've never been allowed to see it. They always create the conditions for the next war. Soldiers don't like wars. Soldiers do not like wars. So that's the military side. And you can argue that the pros and cons of the particular strategy. It's just a method. Now, here's the Reconstruction. I don't like paying for the same real estate twice. The Reconstruction. The foundational principles of the reconstruction of Syria could have been based on the UAE experience. Now, what do I mean by that? I spent 5 years in the Emirates. I have immense respect for the Emiratis and what they have achieved in a most difficult part of the world. The leader of Abu Dhabi at the time, Zayed Al Nahyan, His Highness Sheikh Zayed Al Nahyan, he was the Emir of Abu Dhabi, and each of the Emirates was a separate emirate. Dubai, Ras Al Khaimah, Sharjah, Al Quwain, they're all separate emirates. And along with Bahrain and Qatar, they were called the trucial states because they had a truce with Great Britain. In '68, the Brits said, we're pulling out, you're on your own. Zayed, showing the immense wisdom for which he was rightly admired, bound together the emirates that wished to join. Bahrain and Qatar decided to go their own way, but the others decided to form what they now call the United Arab Emirates. Now, how poisonous was the relationship between them before when he took on this job? Well, in '68, Dubai were exchanging shots over the border with Abu Dhabi, which is the emirate next door, the largest and wealthiest of the emirates. That's how poisonous it was. And yet by '72, Zayed had managed to unify the nation, and the Emiratis are rightly proud of their achievement. They are unique in the Middle East, and people ask me, why did you work for the Emirates? And I said, that's easy, because I'd really work for any other country. But the Emirates, if you want a stable world, you need a stable Middle East. You want a stable Middle East, you've got to have a stable UAE. So I'm happy to support the Emirates because they are unique in the region. Mm-hmm. And so using that same approach that the Emirates did, and that Zayed did in forming their country, and let's have a look at them now. This could have been done for Syria, and it applies for all nations, but this is what could have been done. The Syrian reconstruction could have followed the following threefold approach. 1, develop a strong sense of Syrian nationalism. 2, establish a federated system of government with well-defined borders within which ethnic and religious groups control their government. That's exactly what the Emirates do. 3, establish a moderate interpretation of Islam. That's exactly what the Emirates have done. Now, for those of you who say you can't do Islam, moderate Islam, Islam is what it is, well, maybe. But I've lived and worked in the Emirates, and they have a very, very tight control over the mullahs. Unlike Saudi, where the mullahs up until recently had tight control over the royal family. And that's why the Saudis up until recently were the source, along with other countries, of major Islamic terrorism around the world. So strict is their control. When we deployed to the Afghan with their troops, we trained them up, we took them to the Afghan. One was denied because he had relatives who were extremists, and if you grew your beard too long, that was a sign that you're a little bit radical and you couldn't go. In fact, when I was in the Afghan with them, the beard grew a bit longer, and they were a bit concerned that I'd gone full Islamic as well. But I assured them that wasn't the case. I just didn't like shaving. So using these principles, Syria could have been set up for success. Moderate Islam, it's possible with the right controls. Now, initial steps, continuation of government. So the war that has just been fought as I described. So what happens now? Bashar al-Assad could have remained the president and should have remained the president, acting within strict guidelines, and only during an initial phase and an appropriate date he could have contested an election. The leaders from the other 14 governorates and the leaders of their 65 subordinate districts could also have been elected rather than appointed by Damascus, which is, I believe, still the case. Protection. 1, Syrian armed forces could have remained responsible for the protection of the Syrian people from threats by remnants of ISIL. They would have liked that. And like the president, they would have operated within strict guidelines and been monitored by Western forces. Carrots and sticks. A safe zone controlled entirely by Western forces could have been established in the northwest of Syria, and I'll show you that shortly, based around the governorates of Latakia, Idlib, Hama, Tartus, and Hims. And there, that blue circle is the Western protected zone that we could have established. And you look at the percentages of the number and percentages of the different ethnicities and religious identities that establish a protected zone. Now, just like Germany was after World War II, Syria could have been well controlled until they managed their own affairs. Does that sound paternalistic? Damn right it does. Because the best way to defeat an enemy and make him your friend is with great violence and then with great kindness. And anything in between is unsophisticated and thoughtless civilian speak. So there you go. Now, within that protected zone, we need national pride and sufficient labour. For the purpose of developing national pride and in order to ensure sufficient labour was available for the reconstruction, refugees could have been returned from Europe to Syria and should have been. We have all these military-aged males who left their country and went to another country. They thought they were doing Allah's work by creating what is called Dar es-Salaam, the realm of peace. The realm of peace is where there is Islam. They should have been sent home to rebuild their own nation. For those who did not wish to return to their home governorate, they could have been relocated to the safe zone, but they had to go home to build their country. Mm-hmm. The safe zone rules. Western powers would have provided all security. Regional powers would have funded the reconstruction. How much money do you think Saudi, Qatar, Bahrain, and all the other rich Middle Eastern countries have put into supporting the Arabs in their area? And the answer is zero. Well, it's time for them to cough up. And I'm sure DJT would have managed that nicely. Mm-hmm. There would have been zero tolerance for militant Islam. Religious and ethnic groups would have been compelled to peacefully coexist, and equality of opportunity would have been available to all, regardless of their background. Peaceful coexistence with non-Muslims would have been prescribed and enforced. And any breach, apologies for the typing error there, the spelling mistake, any breach of safe zone rules would have resulted in removal from the safe zone. So this is very heavy-handed, and that's how you deal with this, folks. See, unfortunately, civilians have been taught that war is like a Marvel movie, where at the 1 hour, 23-minute mark, all the bad guys die and the good guys win. Not like that. Nothing like that. Yep. Great violence with great kindness. Okay, what would the Syrian future look like? The safe zone would have allowed the Syrians to create for themselves over time a vibrant, successful, tolerant, wealthy area of the country, which could have progressively spread to other regions, and would have done, because that's what the Middle East was like before the radicalism jumped in. Mm-hmm. This could have been an opportunity for them to change their destiny, to reject militant Islam, to reject armed jihad, to reject internecine rivalries, to reject sectarian violence, and we, the West, would have been only too willing to help. Reformation of their religion and their culture is their choice and their responsibility, not ours. We, the people of the West, would have not been at war with the Syrian people, their culture, nor their religion. Our goal would not be to destroy them, but to protect ourselves. Now, we must think and act anew, to borrow words from your 16th President, Abraham Lincoln. Syria is just one example of countless unnecessary wars and social conflicts. Just one. Genocides go back in history. The Turkish genocide of the Armenians, which never gets spoken about. I wonder why that is. Perhaps the importance of Turkey as the pivot point between the Middle East and Europe.
That's right.
The Indonesian genocide of the West Irians, where up to 100,000 West Irians, this is Papua New Guinea, this is the country, it's half of the New Guinea island, where the Indonesian Kopassus, their special forces, have killed up to 100,000, and nobody says a word about it. Within Australia, and this has the same problem. You can draw the lesson from this next section to your own country, where the division between white and black Australia has been fostered and gendered falsely. In reality, the communist manipulation of Aboriginal people over land rights, as described by a former communist involved in the deception, a guy called Jeff McDonald in his book Red Over Black, could have ended peacefully and equitably. Same could have happened in the US if the political will had been there to do so. But blacks and whites in the US, like blacks and whites in Australia, like all the trouble around the planet, has been engendered and fostered by the cabal.
Yep. Absolutely.
In the future, if nations, groups, or even individuals are destructive to our national peace and prosperity, this is what every country should be saying to themselves. I'm certainly saying it about Oz. If they continue to provide aid and comfort to those who do us harm, and that is not just militarily, but economically and socially, you think about it, because they're all forms of war. If they continue to refuse to take responsibility for their people, their culture, their ideologies, and their religions, the consequences will be grave, because we've lived in a consequence-free world. Well, that's about to change, folks. You are no longer, not as an individual nor as a nation, are able to get away with what you've been getting away with. We have a duty. We, the native sovereign people of the world, and this applies to every person on the planet. The sooner you get it, the happier you will be. We, the native sovereign people of the world, have more in common than we have in difference. We must all reclaim our native land. We must all reclaim our language. We must all reclaim our history. We must all reclaim our culture. And we must all reclaim our faith. We have a duty. To the Syrians, you should do the same. To the Libyans, you should do the same. To the Irish, you should do the same. To the Australians, we should do the same. We must rebuild our nations among the family of nations and seek genuinely to live in peace, harmony, and cooperation as moral, sovereign, self-reliant, economically powerful, militarily intimidating, politically free, culturally vibrant, and socially cohesive nations. Now, let me just finish on this, on the first bit. This checklist, if you add the Christian Western Constitutional Republic, is what Australia One's objective for Australia is. But now let me get back to this unity issue. And I know it's been a long journey around. Moral. We have to become a moral country first. Now, what is morality? Morality, by my definition, is a group of people who agree the difference between right and wrong and then think, speak, and act to advance the right and eradicate the wrong.
That's a good one. Yeah.
We need to be a moral people. Yep, and you can't be a moral people if you think marrying a girl at age 6 is okay, like the Muslims do, because they're following Muhammad's example.
Mm-hmm.
You can't agree that circumcision, cutting off a sensitive piece of a boy's penis at birth and then sucking it, which happens in some of the Judaic practices, is right. We don't. We think that's wrong. So unless you can agree morality, nothing else matters, folks.
Yep.
Nothing else matters. So we've got to come together. We must agree as a people. This checklist, this is what we want. And then when you work through it step by step, the big hands are great. You dive into it and you say, right, in this country, in Australia, you may be whatever religion you want, but your actions must accord with Australian secular law, which is based on a Christian ethic. And so this is how we're going to do it. This unity comes together. This social cohesion can only come together. Can only come together if we can agree these points. And that's the main point. We have a duty. We have a duty to ourselves, to our children, our grandchildren, and to God. And we can get there. We can get there. We can get
Amen. There. Amen. We lost your, oh, there you are. Okay. He's back. All right. We had the voice. We didn't have the picture. Wow. What an incredible presentation that was. My goodness. And like I was saying a little bit earlier in the show, how isn't it amazing, Rick, how everything that we talk about, even when we can pivot from, we can start off the conversation talking about the Telegram CEO, Pavel Durov, and then we can pivot over to Elon Musk, and then we can talk about RFK, and then we can have a geopolitical discussion. And yet all of these different pieces are interrelated and connected. And I think the main takeaway of your presentation, again, it comes back to where we started and how we segued into it, which is, yes, we have to have unity, but how do we actually get there? And I think the Q operation, as we've been living through, as we've been witnessing, has been getting us gradually to that place I think, though, that that word morality has become in the modern world considered so subjective, right? And this is also something that the cabal has constantly done, right? It's like no sooner are we taught, hopefully, right and wrong at home by our parents and so forth. You get into school and you're put into their their brainwashing propaganda system, and all of a sudden everyone's starting to question, well, what is morality really? And and getting into this sort of moral relativism, which has become sort of the dominant uh, in some ways, according to the system, the dominant conventional wisdom of our time, that there really is no such thing as right and wrong, that it's all just a matter of perception, or it's all just a matter of
Mm.
perspective, and so on and so forth. Which, as we both know, I mean, I know I couldn't even utter that out without you starting to shake your head. And I feel the exact same way about it. It has nothing to do, something is either right or it's wrong, and it has nothing to do with an individual's perspective on it. I mean, we can sit here and I mean, evil can rationalize evil all day long, but that doesn't
Mm.
make it good. That doesn't make it just. And certainly cultural religious practice doesn't justify any of those things. So it's very interesting how you took that word unity and really kind of fleshed it out and examined it using a case study of Syria and ISIL and ISIS to really prove this point, which is at the end of the day, these types of maneuvers to unify a country around a set of ideals, constitutional Republican ideals, can be done if the political will is there. But at the end of the day, what really matters is that you have to, in order to have a functioning, vibrant society of any sort, you have to have an agreed upon sense of morality. You have to agree upon what's right and what's wrong, because from there flows everything. And I think in a
Correct.
lot of ways, to kind of tie it back in some sense to RFK, I think that's through a specific lens. That's exactly what he's doing. He's kind of saying to everybody, "Hey, listen, we can hate each other all day long, and we can have these differences all day long." And even he's saying, I don't agree with Trump on everything, but I sure as heck agree with him that I want healthy kids. I sure as heck agree with them that I don't want cancer causing agents in our food. I sure as heck agree with them that I don't want the government using their apparatus to spy on the people, weaponizing all of their power against the people. I certainly don't agree that that we should have, or I certainly agree with them that we shouldn't have the censorship, and on and on and on. We shouldn't have these endless wars. And so what he's doing is, I think he's appealing to that common ground, that regardless of where you are on the left or the right, as long as you're not actually consciously evil, and you're a decent person who's maybe been duped by the system, but you've been trying this whole time to try to adhere to some sense of what you believe to be moral, and you've been so thrown off track by all the gaslighting, all the propaganda, but you're actually still a decent person. And I think what RFK is doing is he's showing everybody that we have a heck of a lot, just like you just said in your presentation, we have a heck of a lot more in common than we do in terms of comparing that to our differences. And so it's a spiritual journey at the end of the day. And actually, I thought what we could do is to kind of to wrap this up a little bit is I'm going to show like a 2 or 3 minute clip, another one of RFK talking about his decision and why it was a spiritual journey. And again, coming back to this whole issue of morality, I think that what he's doing is he's unifying the people through a sense of shared morality that has been long forgotten and that's been weaponized, and that we actually have a shared set of ideals that has been completely pushed off to the side, and all of our differences have been manipulated and they've been weaponized against us to get each other to hate one another, as opposed to being able to identify who the manipulators really are. And so and through that process, I do believe we're going to discover our shared morality again, our sense of national identity. And really, like I said, this goes beyond borders. This has to do with the civilized world. Any freedom loving people, we have to rediscover what ultimately is the fabric that brought us together in the first place. And I think that's exactly what this Q operation has been about, and amongst many other things. So let's go ahead and watch this video. I think this is a really important message here. See if I can, you can see that on your screen. Oh, wait a minute.
Yep, I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. Tried to go full screen on that. Okay.
This is a spiritual journey for me. I reached my decision through deep prayer, through hard-nosed logic, and I asked myself, what choices must I make to maximize my chances to save America's children and restore national health? I felt that if I refused this opportunity, I would not be able to look myself in the mirror, knowing that I could have saved lives of countless children and reversed this country's chronic disease epidemic. I'm 70 years old. I may have a decade to be effective. I can't imagine that President Harris would allow me or anyone to solve these dire problems. After 8 years of President Harris, any opportunity for me to fix the problem will be out of my reach forever. President Trump has told me that he wants this to be his legacy. I'm choosing to believe that this time he will follow through. His son, his biggest donors, his closest friends, and all support this objective. My joining the Trump campaign will be a difficult sacrifice for my wife and children, but worthwhile if there's even a small chance of saving these kids. Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country and our children is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other. That's why I launched my campaign to unify America. My dad and uncle made such an enduring mark on the character of our nation, not so much because of any particular policies that they promoted, but because they were able to inspire profound love for our country and to fortify our sense of ourselves as a national community held together by ideals. They were able to put their love into the intentions and hearts of ordinary Americans and to unify a national populist movement of Americans, Blacks and whites, Hispanics, urban and rural Americans. They inspired affection and love and high hopes and a culture of kindness that continue to radiate among Americans from their memory. That's the spirit on which I ran my campaign and that I intend to bring into the campaign of President Trump. Instead of vitriol and polarization, I will appeal to the values that unite us, the goals that we could achieve if only we weren't at each other's throats. The most unifying theme for all Americans is that we all love our children. If we all unite around that issue now, we can finally give them the protection, the health, and the future that they deserve. Thank you all very much.
That's brilliant.
Absolutely. Just a brilliant message. Brilliant message. So your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's I love it. And it's the whole discussion, whilst it's been a circuitous route all for the last couple of hours, it's come back to that. It really has. We all have to make this decision. Where are we going to sit on a fine point of ideology, or are we going to agree on what we can agree on and move forward and advance our families, our nations, and the planet in a direction that we want to do? As I said, every life is important, big or small. What do they say? There's no small roles, just small actors. Same thing in life, folks. Whatever role you have, play it well. We have an opportunity, and we will take it, to create a brilliant future for this country, for this country, your country, and the planet. You're either going to be on side or not. Suggest you choose wisely, because we're moving forward whether people like it or not. And so there you go. I think it's brilliant. This is the seminal moment in this whole war. I don't want to say we've crossed the line, because we haven't, but gee, you can see it from here, can't you? It's just there.
We've definitely turned a corner. We've turned a corner, and there's no going back at this point. And you can feel that the momentum is just going to continually build. And you can also see, I think it's really obvious that first RFK came out and he's saying, oh, this is a really difficult decision. It's going to really affect my family. And all of a sudden, and then the next day he's already like on, in the mainstream media hinting, oh yeah, there are more big surprises to come. It's like, come on, man. We know you've been a part of this thing right from the beginning. And it's super satisfying and gratifying to when you can go back and you can identify that, what, my instincts were correct. But more importantly, I mean, it's not about me or you or anybody else out there, but I think what it does, it has the effect of reinforcing what we, like you said, I mean, leaders, they believe without seeing. And I think that's what it does. It reinforces that confidence inside of all of us who had the courage to come forward and to make these types of assertions at a time when most people couldn't see it. And now to see the whole picture coming together. And this is, and I agree with you, this is a seminal moment, but this is going to be one of many. As the dominoes continue to fall, there's just going to be, I mean, the Anons are going to be looking like absolute geniuses as time goes on. But far more importantly, and this is, I think, a good point to end our discussion on is that what he's really doing is he's appealing, like I said, to the values that matter to anybody who has a sense of decency inside of them, regardless of what your political persuasion is, regardless of whether you're wide awake or you're fast asleep. If you're a good human being and you're listening to that message, we all know that ultimately children are what bring out the best in people. And unless, of course, you're satanic, evil piece of filth, obviously, but we're talking about in the normal mind and the normal heart, innocence, children, we have a natural inclination to protect them, to rally around them. And of course, we also know, as Q told us, that the enormity of what's coming is going to shock the world. And certainly once people get a full picture of what's been done to our children, the consciousness of humanity is never going to be the same. And like I mentioned earlier, I think that's very much in part what's going on here, is that they're priming the pump. They're getting people ready for much, much larger and much more horrifying revelations about what's been done to children. And I can't even believe I'm hearing myself say that, because here's this guy coming out and he's talking about how like 1 in every 5 kids by the age of 18 now has a fatty liver. That pediatric cancers have absolutely skyrocketed. I think like 80% or something along those lines. As horrifying as that is, it's, I mean, I don't even know if you can really compare it to the other realities that we know about, the things that have happened to these children that, quite frankly, I struggle to even talk about. I struggle to even give voice to, because it's so emotional for me personally, talking about what they've done to these children. And so I think that's what's happening in a big way here, is that he's appealing to the best inside of all of us. And he's saying, to me, I absolutely, I got chills when I heard that for the first time, when he said, the only thing that's really going to save our country and it's going to save our children is if we decide to love them and to rally around our love for them more than we hate each other, and to stop going at people's throats. And I think he's appealing to the things that matter the most to all of us. And that's something that we've gotten so far away from in this divisive society. And there used to be a time, and I know you remember, even I'm old enough to remember, there was a time when there was a such thing called compromise and working together in politics to get things done and crossing party lines and this and that. That hasn't been that way at this point in at least a few decades. I'd have to go back to my early childhood years to remember a time like that. But I think that's what's coming back. And he's getting people to, I think, look within and to recognize their humanity first and forget about their political differences. And again, this message isn't really tailored so much. It's not for us, the Anons and the awakened patriots out there, because we are already dialed in, but it's for everybody else out there who's just so preoccupied with ego and so preoccupied with being right and being on the winning team and party lines and the division that's become so pervasive in our society. At a certain point, when something becomes that pervasive, it starts to feel normal. And I think that this is what they're doing, is they're peeling away those layers. They're showing you all the corruption, and yet at the same time, they're also saying, hey, don't you want clean food? Hey, don't you want kids who don't have cancer? Hey, don't you want to live in a world where we're not constantly at war, and on and on and on and on. And it's having the effect, I do believe, of unifying people, but also, to go back to what you were really focusing in on, is we're unifying, even though we're not using the word, we're not hearing him use the word morality. This is exactly what he's talking about. I mean, the bullet points, every issue that he's talking about centers around that sense of shared morality that we have here in America and all throughout the world. I would argue that, most people have that fundamental sense of decency. So to see the optics of the left and right coming together, to see, Bobby Kennedy's son stand on stage next to Donald Trump, and to hear Trump talk about how he's going to empower RFK to release all the files about JFK's assassination. I mean, that was another one. We didn't even touch upon that, but he came out, he said he's going to establish a panel of experts to work with RFK to investigate and to remedy the chronic disease epidemic in children. I mean, this stuff is absolutely monumentally historic, that the left and the right, even though the optics are all, it's all according to the movie, but that's the way it has to be, that the left and the right optically are coming together around these shared values, and acknowledging that we have our differences, but that we have much more in common than we think. But more importantly, that if we don't acknowledge and we don't rally around the morality that we share toward that unification, that there really is no hope for humanity moving forward. And I think at the end of the day, most of us, we have that sense of, we're getting really close to that precipice of destruction. And there comes a point where, these types of conversations really need to be forced into the narrative space to get people to look within and to reevaluate what they actually believe. Now, obviously, it's a very it's a complex conversation, like we talked about earlier. Most people, I mean, we can sit here and have this conversation, makes perfect sense to us, but most of the folks out there, they need, these powerful examples like RFK, or they need Elon Musk, or these big personalities like we talked about. And again, from a military standpoint, and you understand this better than anybody, the military knows what it takes to win. And so it's kind of an interesting paradox. Like we're getting people to rally and unify around a sense of shared morality, but at the same time, we're also acknowledging that our own personal morality in terms of how the operation is being carried out is pretty much irrelevant in terms of as far as the white hats are concerned, because they're looking at the big picture, and the big picture has to do with winning the war, humanity's survival, and ultimately defeating our common enemy. And we're closer than we've ever been, my friend. And I have to say, it's been it was a very as you said, a circuitous conversation, I guess, at certain points. But like I pointed out earlier, all those dots connect, all those different pieces are interrelated. That's the beauty of it. No matter what we talk about, heck, we could have gone in 10 other directions tonight and we would have been able to weave it all together. So that's the beauty of it. So once again, Lieutenant Colonel Riccardo Bosi, an amazing man. Before we break, why don't we just, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the A1 page, just so you can point out to folks anything you want to mention about your webpage, where to find more information about you, sure, about your initiatives, and then we can sign off in anticipation of the next time.
All right, just before I do that, I'd love to give a shout out to the Anons, because you said something earlier which is very important, which is you were pleased that you were right. You sort of read the tea leaves and you felt some satisfaction, and rightly so, that you got it right, because it was Wolfgang von Goethe, the German administrator, philosopher, writer, who said that once you learn to trust yourself, you will know how to live. Now, what we've gone through here is like a massive selection force for the leadership for the next generations. Every Anon out there that's stuck with this, despite the avalanche of criticism and shame that they tried to heap upon you, you have every one of you has demonstrated extraordinary leadership. The leadership isn't standing in front of 1,000 men and with that 1,000-mile stare. No. It's that daily grind that by your example, you have led others in your wake, so to speak. So every one of you, and Patriot here, and Dave from News Trees, and all the rest of you, you have demonstrated pure, unadulterated, real leadership. You've had the courage, and I call there are four things about this. You demonstrated the courage to do what you had to do, the wisdom to do it the right way, the faith in yourself and the faith in your God. You've all been motivated by love, the love of family, the love of country. And the last one is you, the fifth pillar. You knew who you were, and once you find out what your role in life is, you can't resile from that at all. So to everyone out there who's been with this, whether you know it or not, you are now, and as they say, no good deed goes unpunished. You are going to get the responsibility to lead the world in a very real way. Apart from what we've done here over the last many years on a screen, you have actually self-selected yourselves to take a leading role to create your new country. And whether it's Syria or the United States, makes no difference. It falls on your shoulders now to create this world the way you want to see it. So 10 out of 10 to all the Anons out there from around the world, for your courage, your wisdom, your faith, and your love that has driven you and driven the entire movement forward, and now positioned us to do what we need to do, which is what I call the great labors of peace. Right? The tribulations of war almost done. The great labors of peace that will save your family, your country, and the planet. So, having said all of that, well done. I hope they do strike a medal for you. You all deserve it. I mean it. So this is the A1 page. There's a lot of information there, folks. Use it. I know that there's a gentleman in Scotland that started a Scotland one. It doesn't matter. It's just it's almost like a template for how you can shape your country absent partisanship. It's a philosophy. It is a philosophy that's written, and then the policies are designed to achieve that philosophy. So you've got that. You've also got our Rumble page, Australia One Party Rumble page, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews, thousands of hours. There's a lot there. So just Google it and dive in. Steal, take what you like. And I mean that, please. Everything you see in here, take it, make it your own. I don't care if you just put the name of your country up there and mimic it. That's why it's there. This is all free. It's this collective wisdom that we're all developing. Take it, make it your own. Lead your country. I mean it. Every one of you out there, lead your nation. They need good people to do it. And what A1's been doing is just empowering everybody that wants to come along. So there you go. That's all. That's all I've got to say. But thank you, Patriot, for your extraordinary generosity. Thank you for indulging me during that long presentation. But you'll see in the weeks to come.
I loved it. I loved it. You know, when I get a little bit quiet, usually in an interview, that means I'm taking notes, I'm paying attention, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, how can we connect this to everything else we've been talking about? And that's exactly what we did. It was absolutely brilliant, the way that you broke that down, and you showed that all of these, these problems that we're told have no solution. There's just they're all, and this is also something that you highlighted very well, which is that, and the way my friend Mike King puts it is like a really good pool player doesn't just hit the shot, but they set up the next one, right, in the process, or they block the next one in the process for their opponent. And that's essentially what the cabal has done with all these different wars. Is they're always achieving whatever short-term objective they have, but they're also positioning themselves for the next long-term objective, and conditioning the public in the process that, there's always just going to be perpetual war. I mean, it's almost to the point, I think, where a lot of folks, especially here in America, just anticipate that, this is just the way the world works. This is the way that, and of course, we've all been brainwashed that America is the great savior and all these things. But I won't get into all that. But I know we tied it all together, and it really comes down to, and this is, I just want to give you one more hat tip for that slide that you put together with Dr. Halper Hayes talking about the hero's journey, because in so many ways, every time we get into a discussion, it's only been a couple of times, you and I, but certainly I've had similar discussions with Dave and other people that I have great respect for. We come back to that basic principle, which is, what is it that's keeping us engaged? And it's not just myself having a podcast or, you doing what you do. it's ultimately like what's really driving us, and it's that faith that I think was born somewhere in the process of that hero's journey when we came into a recognition, as you pointed out, as Gotha said, once you know who you are, and everything just becomes clear. It doesn't mean that life gets easy. It doesn't mean that the path gets easy necessarily, but it becomes clear, and you know what you resonate with, what you don't. And I think that having gone through that process for me personally is what enabled me to be able to persevere through all of this. And certainly, I would probably guess that the same is true for all of us, and not just those of us who are doing the speaking, but those of us who are actually listening, and in their own ways are contributing in just incalculable amounts of substance to this movement. And we're all continuing to learn from each other and enrich our experience along the way. And it's just an absolute honor to be in a position. I never imagined that I'd be in a position to have such great conversations, and then to bring them to such a wide variety of just salt of the earth patriots. And not only that, to then see the fruits of our labor. I mean, like you said, we're not there yet, and I think both of us agree that we've already won, but we're not optically yet across that finish line. But to see us and to feel, I mean, we could feel it a lot quicker than we could actually see it, and now we're getting to the point where we can really see that those final phases upon us. And it's going to be one heck of a finish, I think, leading up to the election. I know we've been talking now for two plus hours, so I won't pick your brain on that subject tonight. We can maybe leave that for our next conversation. But one thing is for sure, it's going to be a wild ride. It's going to be a wild finish. But at the end of the day, we've already won. God wins, and it's just an absolute amazing time to be alive. So thank you once again, Riccardo Bosi of Australia One. Just an incredible source of information, and quickly becoming someone that I consider to be a friend as well. So thank you so much, sir.
Absolutely.
And we'll be in touch, and certainly we will set up another in the not too distant future. And hopefully at that point certainly we will be closer to November 5th. And I imagine we'll have a lot to talk about. Many things will transpire between now and then. So thank you, everybody out there, for listening. I will be back soon with another report. But until then, God bless and Godspeed. Patriot out.